The sun beat down on the dusty fields as Samuel wiped the sweat from his brow. His farm was barely holding together. Debts piling up, the soil cracked, and the harvest shrinking year after year. Yet, when a group of tired strangers stopped by his fence one afternoon, Samuel didn't turn them away. Instead, he gave them food from his own pantry, food he could barely afford to spare. What Samuel didn't know was that this single act of kindness would set into motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. Because sometimes, the seeds we plant in kindness grow into a harvest far greater than we ever imagined. Samuel wasn't a wealthy farmer. In fact, most days he barely scraped by. His tractor was old, his barn roof leaked, and the bank kept sending letters stamped with red ink. But through all his struggles, he held on to one thing: his belief that kindness was never wasted. So when the strangers, dusty, hungry, and weary from travel, asked if he had any food, he didn't hesitate. He brought them inside, gave them bread, soup, and fresh water from his well. His neighbor, Mr. Thompson, saw this and scoffed. "You're a fool, Samuel," he sneered. "You can't even feed yourself, and here you are feeding strangers. Don't be surprised when kindness doesn't pay your bills." Samuel said nothing. He only smiled faintly and returned to his fields. But deep down, worry gnawed at him. Was Thompson right? Was kindness really just a weakness in a world that only respected money? That evening, Samuel sat on his porch, staring at the fading light. The strangers had left, thanking him with tired but grateful eyes. But soon after, his neighbor drove by again, shouting across the fence, "Don't come asking me for help when the bank takes your farm. You're too soft, Samuel. That's why you'll lose everything." The words stung. For a moment, Samuel felt the weight of defeat pressing down on him. Maybe Thompson was right. Maybe kindness was for dreamers, not for survivors. And then, just as the last rays of sun slipped below the horizon, he heard it. The sound of engines. Headlights pierced the darkness. One truck, then another, then another. Within minutes, Samuel's quiet yard was filled with vehicles. Men and women stepped out, not with anger, but with purpose. Among them, Samuel recognized the strangers he had fed earlier. But this time, they weren't dusty wanderers. They wore clean clothes, carried clipboards, and some even wore company jackets with a name Samuel didn't recognize. The leader, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, stepped forward. "Mr. Samuel Greene?" he asked. Samuel nodded cautiously. "I want you to know," the man said, "that earlier today when you gave us food, you weren't just helping strangers. You were helping us during an evaluation. We're part of an agricultural foundation, an organization that supports struggling farmers who show not just hard work, but also heart." Samuel's breath caught. "Evaluation? I don't understand." The man smiled warmly. "You passed the test, Samuel. We wanted to see not just who you are in your fields, but who you are as a man. And today you showed us that even when you had little, you still gave. That's the kind of farmer we want to support." With a gesture, the man waved toward the trucks. They began unloading supplies, fresh seed, new equipment, crates of fertilizer, even building materials to repair the barn. Tears welled in Samuel's eyes. The strangers he had fed weren't wanderers. They were the very people who held the power to save his farm. By the time dawn broke, Samuel's yard looked different. His farm had been given new life. His neighbors gathered, watching in stunned silence. Even Mr. Thompson, the man who mocked him, stood slack-jawed at the sight of the trucks unloading blessings Samuel had never expected. Samuel turned to him and said quietly, "You see, Thompson, kindness isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength of all. What you hoard dies with you. What you give lives on." The yard erupted in applause from the workers and foundation members. Samuel, once dismissed as too soft, had been proven right. His kindness had brought him more than money ever could. And so, Samuel's story reminds us all, the world may tell you to be hard, to think only of yourself, to see kindness as weakness. But the truth? The greatest riches don't come from what we keep. They come from what we give. Because when we sow kindness, we never know what kind of harvest will return to us. And sometimes the very act of feeding strangers becomes the key to feeding generations.